All right. It's Jeff Mayhugh. It's John Beatty. It's Politics and Parenting, where we talk about politics, but we talk about it differently. John, how are you doing today?
Doing well, Jeff. A little tired. It's been a long week. It's been a long 2 weeks, I guess, since we were off last week. But I'm doing well. I don't know if you knew there was an election last week, and some people want to say it was the end of the world. Some people want to say it was the beginning. I think it's just like all things. It's an opportunity to consider what people did, what might have gone wrong. I think shout outs in order to podcast guest Ian Lovejoy for his win, and congratulations to him. I remember when he was interviewing with us, he just sounded really knowledgeable about the issues. And I imagine in a tough competitive race, actually talking about the issues that matter to people rather than sort of what the national narrative is good politics, as they say. So I don't want to say I'm not surprised he won because it's always tough in these races, but I think actually understanding what your constituents care about, it matters. And so congratulations to him. And I also saw that you got another piece published in the Hill, so congratulations on that. It was about campaigns finance reform, and you were basically calling out Mitch McConnell for being a party boss. And I know we talked a lot about this, but maybe there's new listeners that you can kind of explain sort of the context for that. Patronage, donations, parliamentary control, a lot of little things that go into that.
Yeah, so party bosses became really famous in the Gilded Age with Boss Tweed and Roscoe Conkling. And so this is where they controlled the appointments of power, and they would dole those out to people who would be loyal to them, and help them get reelected and work for their campaigns. And they basically use government money, or government power, to control their power and stay in office. And Mitch McConnell doesn't do it that way per se. Mitch McConnell's power comes from the super PAC. You know, even with Citizens United, they're not supposed to coordinate with the campaigns. The PACs are, but I don't know how that's really regulated. It seems that there's a lot of coordination that kind of goes on, especially when you hear about that backdoor meeting that Holly and McConnell, said. He's like, basically, like, PACs are the way you stay in office. Like, don't mess with
Well,
that.
Jeff, if it's all in the FEC rules, like if you read the little booklet that they published, that's like 300 pages, it's very clearly spells out the limits and stuff. And there's the super PACs, there's also the leadership fund PACs. I don't know if you might know about this, but every candidate has their campaign PAC that they fundraise for, and then they've got the leadership PAC, and then there's all sorts of things where you basically can take whatever money you want for your leadership PAC and spend it however you want. So you can take nice vacations as a fundraising trips, if you will, quote unquote fundraising trips. But like I remember reading about this. Like once you start running for office and you like win a primary, basically you're fundraising for your regular congressional campaign where you got to spend to like win, but then also a leadership PAC that you then tend to you want to use to dole out influence to other candidates to get them. So it's all on the open, Jeff. There's no secrets.
Except, well, so the secret is, and it's like the secret is you don't know who necessarily is donating to the PAC, or, I mean, it becomes a little bit more murky, right?
Very
You don't
murky.
know
Yeah.
who the representative is really representing, um, and just the idea of, and we kind of talked about Reed's rules in the House. Well, Mitch McConnell in the Senate, he used the filibuster a lot to kind of control his crew, and they've consolidated power up into the majority leader in the House, in the Senate as well. And using that money, be like, hey, look, if you don't get on board with this, we're not going to have as much in the leadership fund for your campaign next year,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe we're going to decide to donate it to somebody that's going to primary you. And so it is, what do I talk about all the time? Money is a tool. Money is
Right.
not speech, it's a tool. And Mitch McConnell uses that money as a tool or a weapon or whatever to kind of get the Senate in line. And some people like that. Some people think that that's a good thing. I would disagree, because you're putting power in a consolidated person's hands, and that's not what our founders wanted it to be. They wanted the Senate and the House to be deliberative bodies. That was what Congress was supposed to be. That was really important. So I just, the whole, Hawley thing, I don't really know what to think of Josh Hawley. I know he's a highly educated person. He sometimes I listen to him speak and I go, yeah, and other times I go, whoa. I feel like he's kind of that intellectual populist leader that would just kind of say anything to get power. But at the same time, a broken clock is right, at least twice a day. And him going after Citizens United, I think it's on par with what he should be doing in the Senate. And if it's just a stunt, which it is, cool. I wrote an article about it and a whole bunch of people read it. And, the more we talk about Citizens United and it being a problem, the better.
Well, that's the thing too. Like the Why Congress book is actually very informative about this, because it's not just the cloture vote, but it's the majority leader gets to set the whole agenda for debate and set like how you actually come up with a bill. So Senator Hawley's bill is basically dead because the majority leader isn't going to let it come to the floor. Or if there's some kind of vote or something, there's Robert's rules where you've got like amendments on amendments, and so there's a way to like basically block any kind of discussion on a bill, because you say, I've got an amendment to amendment to amendment, and that's like based on sort of procedural common parliamentary procedure that we have in the United States. Like you're basically stuck because that's the rules that everyone agrees to. So now in order to get anything passed, you got to suspend the rules, and that's complicated. So the majority leader doesn't just cloture, but it's like everything else that they can use to actually effectively kill any kind of legislation. And so the Why Congress book is fascinating when he talks about like basically this bill is going to come up. They're going to allow you 4 amendments. The amendments are already pre-planned and pre-approved, and they anticipate they're all going to die, and then the bill goes through. And it's just like it's a weird kabuki theater, I think is what people call it, which is like there is truly no debate, like at least no public debate. It all kind of happens behind closed doors. And being in a public body, I can understand that sometimes you just you gotta like hash things out in private, and there is some merits to that for sure, but it kind of belies the whole essence of what we think of the Senate, where you've got a day-long speech from a senator about a key issue, and we're not privy to that anymore.
No.
So how would you fix it, Jeff?
Oh, how would I fix it?
Yeah.
So, I think people kind of, when they come at Citizens United with me, they're like, no, Citizens United is good. And I'm just like I think the evidence.
Well, so the context of it depends who you're talking to. So because it was like a conservative majority that struck it down, right? I think Republicans tend to think that it was good, and Democrats think it's bad. But I think as you're going to argue, it's probably bad for everyone.
Well, no, the people I talk to kind of in the political circle, they all kind of think it's good because that's how they make money.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge industry. The politics feeds the media ad spending. And if you got rid of money in politics like that, it would be catastrophic to our economy in a lot of ways, to be honest with you. But I think the way that you do it is you layer it like our Congress, like our government, and you kind of prioritize where people spend their money by the donations. So the first thing that I would do is I would eliminate corporate donations and set boundaries to everywhere donated. So you could only, if you're donating for a president, you can only donate in, as an American citizen. If you're donating to Congress, you have to live in the district. So you eliminate corporate donations, individuals only, but you raise the cap on individual donors. So right now, I believe it's $3,300, $3,300 per election cycle. If you're going for president, I would raise it to $5 million.
$5 million?
$5 million.
Not a
yes.
typo right there?
No, $5 million for president. And for a Congress race, it would be $3,000.
So So not inflation adjusted. Like I think originally it was $2,000 in the original campaign finance rules, and it's kind of goes up every year, or every cycle because of inflation. Would you make
Well,
that
so
inflation adjusted?
I'm sure, because in remembering, I'm shrinking the districts too. Okay, so in
Mm,
my campaign finance world, I'm building a functional government, right? So we're not doing just one thing, because campaign finance doesn't fix anything alone, and neither does uncapping the House. They need to be done, like, we need a lot of congressional reform, okay? And so $3,000. There was $8 million spent in District 10 from the Wexton in the last election cycle. That's with about 756,000 people in the district. So you cut your districts in half, you're down to like 389,000. You keep the same amount of money, okay, in the pot, and now it's 3,000 people per district. Remember, or I don't know if I mentioned this, but if you max out your donation, whether for president or for Congress, you get a guarantee one-on-one with the candidate, because
and that's like you're enshrining this in your law that you're passing.
yes, and because this goes back to Citizens United and this whole idea that money is speech. Okay, well, it's not. Okay, money is a tool,
Mm-hmm.
and so everybody can speak, but not everybody has money. And so by buying time with the candidate, you are using the tool of money to guarantee that your speech is heard.
Mm-hmm.
That is significantly different than this idea that money is speech. And money's more like a megaphone or a telephone.
Yeah.
And separating out, like, regular everyday Americans really need to understand that you should not pay as much attention to the president as you do. Like, it is, if you want to, everybody looks and they blame Congress and they blame the president and they blame the parties and they blame everybody else. But at the end of the day, every single American citizen needs to look at the mirror and go, I gotta hold myself accountable here. And your job is the people's house. Your job is I have a book right there, House Out of Order, written in the 1920s by a ex-Missouri representative. I haven't gotten through but a couple pages, but like, people, get your house in order. Stop worrying about who the president is. Like, let the people that are actually going to get in the room with the president, the people that have to think along the same lines as the president in global scale, let them be in the room with the president, influencing the president. Let the president focus on those people and let those people influence them. I have no problem with Elon Musk paying $5 million to a presidential campaign or candidate and getting a one-on-one with them. I want
Mm-hmm.
that to happen. I want my president to speak to the best and brightest America has to offer. What I don't want is, I don't want foreign companies to be able to use the PAC system as a way to launder money through and control our political campaigns. That's what I don't want. So let's just be transparent about it. They're going to corporations at the end of the day, they shouldn't be donating, okay? But the owners of the corporations absolutely should be donating, and they should be donating large sums of money, and we should know about it. And it should be
Mm-hmm.
totally cool. Like, you think about it, the $5 million, it would take 320 people to get to $1.6 billion. That's how much money was in Biden's campaign. I think there are 320 people in the United States that could afford that if they really wanted to.
Probably. But that's the other thing too. Like sometimes you kind of want to be in the background, in the shadows, if you will, and you don't want your name associated with it. So I think that's another advantage that people would say of the super PAC system, the quote dark money. But
But I
I think like
mean, by
that
nature,
is a
dark
problem.
money
That's
lets
bad.
others in.
Yeah, no, it's bad. I mean, like have you one watching the Eric Adams scandal in New York City, where there's like a Turkish corporation is paying off a developer and funneling money through people, and they actually never actually wrote the checks, so their names are on them, and now it's not looking so good. So like it happens
Yeah.
that foreign businesses find ways to funnel money through there, and because you've got a super PAC system where your names don't have to be on the checks, it's very easy to do that. And I think that's kind of what we're thinking about. It's bringing things out, things that happen that are legitimate into the open, so that we can squash the illegitimate activities.
Yeah.
Like I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think again to this idea of speech, money being speech is like, all right, even if we get, we remove this idea of the PAC system, and now you've still got this corporations thing where it's like, well, the corporation can't donate, and people might disagree with that. And look, I kind of understand where you're coming from with that, because the business needs to be able to like have some sort of sway in the government, but you get that in being in the room with them. And you're going to be in the room with them as a major corporation working with congressional members, you're going to send lobbyists, there's lots of different things you're going to do.
Well,
But
it gets the people of the company involved too, because again, like if something big is happening for your industry, perhaps, like then people in the company are have an incentive to also make sure that their representative, their representative of their district can listen to them and understand what this change is going to affect their company. Like that's how you can get that sort of mechanism where the corporation needs its voice to be heard, and it can get heard by limiting it to the people that work for a company.
right. And so those people can go donate individually, right? Because what this does is there may be a lot of people in the corporation or works for the corporation who maybe doesn't want the money donated to that candidate or the other candidate, right? And they're using the money that all the people in the company generate, and they're using it because there's a small portion of people deciding that up top, right? And they may say that it's for the best interest of the company, but I mean, we also get where it's a lot of activism at the top now too, where the corporation is deciding like, hey, I want to be pro this or pro that, and so I'm going to donate to these companies. And again, like, I don't have a problem with that as an individual citizen. I have a problem with it because, it's not that's not the corporation's job. Like, the corporation is supposed to serve the community. The
Serve
corporation,
customers. I mean,
yeah, the
ultimately serve some kind of
customers,
customers.
it should have a good relationship with its labor force, and take care of them. And the people at the top are going to make enough money, and if they want to donate to those candidates and they can represent them, then that's good. And can you take your personal bias out of anything? Like, if you're working for a company and you're the one that decides where the political money goes, and you happen to be a single issue voter, and that may be pro-life or pro-choice, you're gonna throw your money in the single issue you're at,
It will
regardless of
take it.
anything else.
Yeah.
And not everybody that generated that revenue believes that. That's their, I mean, and this idea, that's their speech, but somebody else is deciding what it says. And back to my original point, money's not speech, money's a tool. And we just need to, if you want to recognize it in the campaign finance system, cool, but let's just recognize for what it is.
And actually, I think that there's a sort of precedent that in the idea of unions, and the fact that you don't necessarily have to join a union to work in a union shop. Like, I may be misremembering this, but I believe there's some Supreme Court case recently that said, like, again, the union may speak for you in some cases, but they can't speak for you in all the cases. And so that is compelled political speech to join a union. And I think we in the same way we protect that, where you don't have to join something that you don't agree with. You don't have to put your money behind things you don't agree with. And speaking of things you don't agree with, I heard you went door knocking the weekend before the election. How was that?
I did go door knocking. How did you find out there, John? I get spied on?
I'm in a secret back channel telegram that I hope doesn't get FOIA'd.
Yeah, I actually knocked for Josh Thomas and Danica Rome on the Saturday before election.
And what would drive you to? I mean, I guess the first question: do you agree with those candidates on a number of
No,
issues?
not at all. Not at all. I don't agree with most of what they have to say.
And so, like, well, what do you agree with them then? If that, again, like, it's a single issue right there, what do you agree with them on?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
I mean, it's hard to agree with people that don't have like real positions on things.
Sure.
And it's
That's
also,
true. Yeah.
more than anything,
which
It's
is a lot of
hard to agree
politicians,
with somebody
to be fair.
you don't actually get to debate with. Like,
Mhm.
I don't really know what they believe. I know what their commercials say. And, I think I didn't go because I agreed with them. I went because I thought I'd be able to talk to them. Like, at the end of the day, I was strolling through Twitter and I saw an advertisement for door knocking, and it was the next day, and I happened to have it a couple hours free in the morning, and I was like, sign me up. So I signed up and I went there, and I was like, hey, I'm going to meet Josh Thomas. I've been trying to get a hold of Josh Thomas the entire election cycle. He's running in my district. He's my representative. He's my voice. How could he know what I want him to say if he's never heard mine?
That's true.
Let me show up to him, and maybe I'll be able to talk to him.
And you probably got an hour with him, right? With each of the candidates.
Josh was not there.
Ooh. So did you actually go door knocking and like knock for them? Was it an opportunity to meet with people?
Yeah. So you've knocked for the Republicans before, right?
I've knocked for many candidates. Yes, I knocked myself.
So tell me if this sounds familiar.
Yeah.
The appointment time is 9:00.
Mm-hmm.
The person running the show shows
and you
up.
get there at 8:50 because you're ready to get out the door at 9:00, right?
And
Yeah.
and the person running the show shows up at 9:05. The person with the literature shows up at 9:15.
Yeah, sounds about right.
They assign
at least there's donuts and coffee, right?
They assign the walk books at 9:30. You pick your literature out of the back of a trunk that is disorganized.
That's
sometimes you get way too much. Sometimes you don't get enough.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what it's like to knock for the Democrats? You showed up and you went to a table. They signed you in. They gave you a pack of 43 pieces of literature because that's how many doors you were knocking. And it was pre-bundled, ready to go with your walkbook ID on the piece of paper. You download the app. By the way, it works flawlessly. Okay. If you've ever used the Republican app, so there's i360 and what's the other one?
Campaign Sidekick.
Campaign Sidekick,
which is the worst.
They're glitchy. They don't work great. If you're out in the sun, like, good luck. And theirs worked great. They had a script with questions. Like, it was very ready to go. And like, this isn't to negate the people working on the Republican campaigns. Like, that's a lot of work to do all that, and they're all volunteers and they're not getting paid, and there's not a lot of them, but there could be more if maybe they wanted to talk about other things and let other people help. But it shows you the difference in the organization, and it's like, because it's in both camps, there's some similarities to this. Both of them give you walkbooks where you knock on only people that agree with you's door.
Yep.
The Democrats are very upfront with, do not talk to anybody that isn't on the walkbook. Even if you knock the door and it's somebody else in the house, don't talk to them. In their script, if you like come across somebody that's like conservative or like, strong Republican, they just tell you to like tell that person to have a nice day and move on. They're not even like worried about engaging, persuading, or anything at the door. So they're just both groups, they're focusing on their guys, their people, and driving the vote out. And if that's what it takes to win elections, then the more organized side won. And you saw that. Look, can you believe, speaking of campaign finance, Juan Pablo and SD 31, is it 31 or was it
31?
31. He spent $4.7 million for a state Senate race, and he lost. I
believe it.
Lost. Like, I mean, the Democrats spent more, but still, it's insane. And for me, it's frustrating. I can't talk to the Democrats because there's so many gatekeepers, because they're so well organized to keep you out. And the Republicans, you can show up to door knock and there's going to be a candidate there, because that's like the blue collar labor party, like they're getting outspent every direction. They can't keep up because in reality, they're not willing to, they weren't willing to do the I don't know, the other things that the other side does. And now when you go to a Republican meeting, you get the same thing. It's like, okay, well, the Democrats do it, so we're going to do it. The Democrats do it, so we're going to do it. And it's like, you've been complaining that that's the problem with the country, and now
Hey, if
doing it.
if the Republicans can fix door knocking by actually showing up on time with literature and pieces, like that's a win in my book.
I mean, I was blown away how organized Democrats were. I mean, I had only ever had experience knocking doors for Republicans, and it's like this whole thing about like election security and like losing elections. No, dude, like if you're a Republican and you're crying election security, go knock doors for the Democrats. See how well organized they are, and just be like, which business would you pick? You
Yeah.
know, because here's the other thing: when you knock doors, Republican or Democrat, there's this other similarity that happens. You'll knock on the door. Hi, I'm here knocking for Josh Thomas, or I'm here knocking for John Stirrup. And do you know there's an election coming up on Saturday or on Tuesday? Yes. Do you plan to vote? Yes. Do you plan to support Josh? Do you plan to support John? I don't know. What party are they running on? And then I'll go, depending on who I'm knocking for, Democrat. And they'll be like, yes, we plan on supporting them. And then if it's a Republican, if you're knocking for the Republican and you say Republican, they'll go, yes, we plan on supporting them. And then the follow-up question is, so you didn't know the candidate's name before right now, and you're already determined that you're going to vote for them? And they'll go, yes, they're on the right side. And that's a problem. Like,
Right.
that's a big problem. And the parties, the candidates, the people with the power to make change don't care. Like, they don't care that they're just hurting people to the ballots. And it's scary, you know, like your job, it's information. Like if I'm donating money to a congressional candidate, I want them to inform people of the district what's going on. I want them to engage the people they represent, not just the people that's on their side and vote for them. That's not representation. Like it's a big problem. People should be concerned.
No, I completely agree. And I think that's when you talk about the 4.7 million or 4.5 million that was spent on election, like, was that spent on bringing people to your side? Because if you look at Senate District 31, it's a swing district, as they say, but it's a district that Youngkin lost by 3 or 4 points. So it's not like you're coming in there and you already got quote an advantage partisanly, where you just have to bring out the Republicans and they'll vote for you. Like you actually have to bring in people to your side to vote for you. And when you look at the ads, and I know where a lot of that money went because it came into my mailbox every single day with tons of mailbox. And and I saw the ads on TV and such, and like, you just kind of wonder, is that money being spent to bring people to your side? And I think far too often it's not being brought to people's side. Look at that. I don't know if people on the YouTube can see this, but people listening, it's what is that, 30 or 40 pieces of literature that came in the mail?
I don't know. I have hundreds of them.
There you go.
I saved them, but that's where the money goes. And the money goes, like, I will get so many of these, but people that are not in their system won't get any.
Right.
They won't know what's going on, and they won't know when to vote, and they don't know what the candidates want. Not that these things say anything of value, right? And this is back to the point. $3,000 for a congressional race, you get a one-on-one with your candidate, okay? Your voice gets heard. That's your house. Like, you're an American citizen. You have freedom of speech, and your speech is heard through the House of Representatives. And if you're going to spend money, you should have it heard. Use that money as a tool and get the other end of your, whatever. I lost my friggin' train of thought there, but
no, but it's true though. Like there's no effort to bring people into a coalition, and this is so much about what politics is. It's not about purging people out of your party and who aren't like pure enough, where you just say, "Oh, that's a rhino." It's about like building a coalition, and we've so far lost that. And at least on the Republican side, I think the Democrats are much better about of keeping whatever their coalition is and keeping party unity. But
well,
it's about like you have to bring people over at some point.
Well, so I think I talked about Reed's rules last week, right?
Mhm.
Or when we had Philip on. So I wrote an article. It hasn't been published yet. I don't know if it'll be published or I'll put it in my Substack. It's called "When the Republicans Ruled," and it's the story of how Reed's rules came to be, and that's kind of how we got to that. And it's
Mhm.
consolidated party power, and
Mhm.
you put the power in the parties, and that just continued to grow. And I read this. So can you see this here?
Congressional
So
record, House.
yeah, I pulled the
What
whole
date?
congressional record from the day that Reed's rules went in, and I read the whole thing. It was fascinating. It's linked in the article whenever it comes out, John. You'll have to read it because you'll get a kick out of it. But like that's kind of where it goes, and it consolidates the power, and then over time, as Congress has gotten kind of weaker, and the Senate has consolidated power, and the parties have consolidated power. Now we get this system that's essentially tyranny, if you look
Mhm.
at it, because
Yeah.
James Madison in Federalist Number 47 said the consolidation of the legislature, judiciary, and executive into one is the very definition of tyranny. And I'm paraphrasing that. But now what parties do, and I asked this when I went door knocking to the Democrats. I said, do you think that it's a good thing for our country that the House of Delegates, the Senate, and the governor, that one party should tell you to vote for their partner in those things as a way to get something done? Should the party's objective be to consolidate the power of the two branches of Congress and the executive into one? And they did not want to give me a good answer. Like it just, and it's not like they give you, it was just a really weird scenario where like they just didn't want to talk about it.
Mhm.
And again, where as a citizen, where am I supposed to go to talk about these things? Like if
Well,
I
so
can't go
Jeff,
to,
Jeff, there's a house in Leesburg that I drive by a lot that has a sign that says "Stop One Party Rule," and I see the other campaign sign, so I know which party they're opposed. But like, they're complaining about one party rule, but really what they want is their party to be in rule. Like, it doesn't
yes,
matter. The stop one party rule is the fact that their party is out of power and not able to push things through, rather than just the fact that a party is in control. Like, they would be very happy if their governor, their House of Delegates, and their legislature were all controlled by the same party, because they know that their partisan plan would get through. And it just, to me, it's disingenuous. That's all.
well, yeah, and then it's dangerous. Like
Mm-hmm.
there is a reason that we have this system of checks and balances. Um, like James Madison said, it's the very definition of tyranny. And remember, if this is the federal government and the president, the Senate, and the Congress are all Republican and the Supreme Court's Republican, what do you have? If it's vice versa, if it's Democrat, 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 and the court is Democrat, which is harder to imagine right now, but if it is, what do you have? You have a system where it's all controlled by one
Mm-hmm.
party, and it's the whole point of our system is to make sure that no one thing is controlling a majority of the system. Um, and
And the thing with the partisan aspect of it is the party itself is not democratically elected. Like, your governor is democratically elected, technically. Your representative is technically democratically elected. The Supreme Court is kind of weird, especially on the federal level, but on states, it's sometimes it's by election. But the fact that the party leadership, no one really has any say in, and like, that's where insiders come in, and that's where money has an influence. I mean, like, there's a fight right now on the Republican side about the Ronna McDaniel and Viva Ramaswamy's going after her, but like, no, I never voted for Ronna McDaniel. I don't think you ever did too. And like, that's where it's kind of shielded from actual, like, day-to-day people's day-to-day lives, and how they can influence that. And I think, like, that's that tyranny you talk about. It isn't the fact that it's just one person, but the fact that there was no real collaborative effort to get to there. And again, going back to Why Congress, my new favorite book, I'm thinking about, like, this recent federal jury case where they basically said that real estate commission is some kind of form of monopoly, and it has to be canceled. Like that's literally 12 people and a judge that have upended the entire real estate industry of the United States. Like, whether or not you agree with that, and I'm obviously I'm biased because my mother is a real estate agent, my wife helps her. Like, I see how the business works and the industry works, but there was no legislative effort in that. And why Congress talks about how, like, the Civil Rights Act, like, it took a long time to get there, but you had buy-in from so many people eventually, and you kind of you let the whole process work itself out. And then once the Civil Rights Act was passed and the Southerners lost, they recognized it and they accepted it, and they realized, like, this is the rule of the land now. But now we're gonna have this weird, like, fight where there's commission, again, like, there was no effort to kind of come up with a consensus on that, and that's where we're going to be stuck. And like,
Well,
this partisan thing is a sort of a microcosm of that, but it's so, I don't know, we're
it was
so
so
siloed or something where we just can't, like, actually talk to people with different with persuasions. And when you said you were door knocking for the Democrats, it's like, Jeff, Jeff, what are you doing? And as you
look,
discussed
it
it, like,
doesn't matter. Like when you door knock, like you're just letting somebody know that there's a vote
I
coming
know,
on.
yeah.
Like it's if it's not me, it's going to be somebody else. But like they're not short on door knockers for the Democrats. Like I said, they're a very well organized machine. For me, it was about trying to actually speak with the candidate, which
Mm-hmm.
is ridiculously hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you were kind of talking about the consensus that was built in Congress during the civil rights, and there was no real backlash, like significant backlash to it, and that was because you built this large consensus. It
Yep.
wasn't a simple majority.
And
Okay.
and not only that, but you gave someone the opportunity to say, like, I don't agree with this, and then they
Right.
lost anyway, and they were able to accept it.
Yep,
Like,
you let the other side have their argument. And
mhm.
like that is a prime example of Congress working the way that Congress was designed. But
And just the beauty of free speech in general, like letting
yep,
people give their piece. Like, that's what it is. It's about giving their piece so that you can have peace. And if you don't let someone speak their mind, they will feel like they are not represented at all.
yeah.
When in fact, like, there is some representation, but you just gotta, like, let the whole thing go. But when things just get jammed through, that's where trouble starts.
Well, so remember when we first met and I used to say I believe that 2 out of every 3 people are good people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like there's a reason for that. And there's a reason that our government is based on this like congruent majority, if you will. And that's because 2 out of every 3 people are good people. One person is the strong good person. One person's the bad person. And then there's a third person in there that, they could go either way, but they're going to go the way of good because they want to be good, because everybody wants to be good, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And you have this person, the person in the middle there. If this person gets silenced, they're going to think that this person's bad and they're not going to listen to their argument. Right.
Yep.
And that's why it's so important that if you have the argument, if you are the good person in the deliberative body, then you allow the other person to be heard. And now what you might find out is, oh crap, I wasn't the good person. Maybe I'm wrong. And maybe you change your mind and you're over here. And now you're part of that whole, the other side. Or, at least the
Or
person
you
in the
learn from their
middle.
argument. You learn from their arguments, so, like, oh, they're wrong, and this and this and this, and then I can bring someone else along.
Right. And
Yeah.
so now if you hear their argument, now you can convince the person in the middle to come to your argument because they're wrong. And like, this is the system. But back to Reed and his rules, and it became a simple majority, a 51% type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a problem. And that's kind of how we legislate now. And that's why we have so much division in the country, because we don't bother to get concurrent majorities anymore. We are forcing it's about tyranny, it's about
Mm-hmm.
one party rule, and then it's about forcing it through on slim majorities and executive actions. And this just not good. It's not how the system was designed.
No, and we'd see its breakdown, and we see the fruits of that sort of bad system. Like, we're in a bad spot, and it doesn't seem to be getting much better. But that's what we're talking about. So we can get better.
Well, and that brings me to what I want to talk about next. So like I got into this because I kind of saw this problem. Now I didn't maybe know, as deeply as I know it now because I study it. But my thought process was 2024 is going to be one of the most contested elections we've ever had. Presidential, congressional race, there will be a lot of contested elections, I believe, coming up in 2024. I think the groundwork's already been laid. Nothing really happened after 2020. There was no real resolution for the two sides that felt they were gypped. And I wrote an article, The Big Lie of 1876, a few weeks ago for the Freeman Letters. And in it, I kind of tell the story of the first real contested election and the subsequent investigation that came afterwards. And this led to the partisan nature of our government now, in all reality, because the Republicans didn't trust the Democrats because of all the election fraud. And it didn't go away.
Wait, so you're saying there was election trouble before 2020?
I am. There's
No,
always been
I thought 2020 was the first election we could never trust.
There's always been election integrity issues. There always will be election integrity issues. There's always going to be somebody that has the mantra, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. Now, those people are wrong, and we try to limit that as much as possible, but those people exist, and we just got to recognize it. But like my thing was, I wanted to meet somebody in power and kind of share the information that I had learned and been like, look, from what I can see from the outside, we have this, and this problem. I just want to help. I want to work on a campaign. I want to, I've offered to work for every state, local people that I've met in person, Republican or Democrat. When I met Abigail Spanberger, I said I'd work for her for free. Like, I don't care. Like, I've put a lot of effort into learning this stuff, and I think that it could really help the country. And we need legislators talking about congressional reform. We had Philip Wallach on the show last, and while we may not agree on what that congressional reform is, we both agree that congressional reform is like the number one issue that Americans should be talking about.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're talking about. And that's what I got in it for. I ran for Congress to try to meet somebody and talk to somebody. I have been doing this for a year and a half or 2 years or whatever it is now. And it's a lot of work, and I'm just tired and I'm kind of burnt out, to be honest with you. And the business it's a slow transition, pulling Vanessa over and carrying us. And I've just got to a point where it's like, I kind of have to either make this a job, like where I get paid, or kind of move on. And so I guess what I'm looking for is to open up politics and parenting for subscriptions. And I would need probably about 160 subscribers to donate about $50 a month to kind of make it so I can do this. I mean, I typically read about one book a month, one book a week. I ideally, like, if I wanted to do this show or just writing in general on a regular basis, articles, informational for people to understand what's going on, I'd probably read like one book a day.
Yeah.
And if I could do that if I didn't have to like run my business and this, and it's complicated, and
No,
there's
I'm with
lots
you.
of
Like it's
go into
this
it.
is like politics is a big drag on people's time, and this is one of the things I discovered on the school board is you think it's a part-time job, and then it becomes like a full-time thing, and you're like, I don't really have time for this and everything else, and
Right.
things suffer because of it. So I completely understand where you're coming from. Like it is a lot of time, even though it may seem easy, or people make it seem easy.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing is like I'm really frustrated the fact that I just don't think people talk about the right things. Like I said, it's congressional reform. Everybody wants to talk about the thing that affects them, and I get that thing is hurting you. It's hurting me, right? But that thing doesn't get fixed until we fix Congress, okay? And look at Mitch McConnell. In my article, I pointed out that when Mitch McConnell entered the Senate, we were like $1.7 billion in debt, and now we're like $33 trillion in debt. So this guy's had power for a really long time, and he's used money to keep himself in power and gain more power. And
Hmm.
Americans have gotten poorer, okay? Because we're in debt. That's $100,000 per every single taxpayer or person, I think. I can't remember the exact number there, but
No, I think it's like per person. It's not like
per
it's
person,
per
which,
voter or something. It's gross.
which means if you have dependents, you're in more debt.
Yeah.
And like, but it hasn't, there's no repercussions for him, you know? Like he controls so much of the American citizens' power, and we can't do anything to get him out of it because we can't vote him out of Kentucky, right?
Hmm.
And he's not going anywhere if he, can drown out his opponents with money. And the Republicans aren't really going to even try to, run a primary against him because they want him to use that power to get them more power in the House. It's a game, and they're
Yeah.
just, he's like, he's not the king, but he's a bishop, right? I mean, he's a very powerful piece in the puzzle or in the game, and they don't want to let him go. So
Yeah.
I just think I lost my I got sidetracked on campaign finance again, but
No, it's just like it's a big problem. Like, and I would go back to like what we're talking about. Like when we first met running, like I would think, oh, I don't remember what I thought was important. I think big tech was what I always thought was important. And then hearing you talk about expanding the House, campaign finance reform, I think no one had ever really talked about it to me. Now, I kind of being in technology, I sort of was sort of like on the periphery of sort of very liberal circles. I mean, I would say progressive circles that they always complain about Citizens United. So maybe I was primed to hear the sort of counter argument from, which you might say like the Republican side. But like once you started talking about it, like I really kind of got what you were talking about. And I think, you explained it. So I do think these are big issues, and I think these are massive issues that are going to help fix the logjam, as I like to say, of all the other important issues that our country faces. Like, and you could, I know, I take it from a sort of programmer perspective. Like, if you've got a bad system, you're going to have buggy programs on top of it, and so we need to sort of like fix the system, fix the flaws in it, reprogram it, if you will, or in order to get back to where the system should be going, where our founding fathers sort of anticipated and expected things to be. And I think that's the mess we're in. Is we're so far afield from where the original foundings was. What
yeah,
is it, like a republic if you can keep it, as people like to say? Like, it is
yeah,
a republic if you can keep it. I think it's a very trite phrase, but it is very very apt.
yeah,
Where if it is a partisan tyranny, a partisan dictatorship, like, things don't get done, and we all suffer for it.
yeah. And so going into 2024, I mean, when I jumped in and I wanted to run for Congress, like my whole goal was like, obviously, I'm not going to win. I mean, a little part of you thinks, hey, this is a catch fire. You never know, right? Like
A
you
big part
have
of you
to,
always thinks that. Yeah, a big part
everybody
of you
does,
always thinks that.
let's just be real. Let's just be real.
Yeah.
But I mean, deep down inside, come on. I knew. But I mean, my goal was for the next one. And like, I'm sitting here, the economy's tough. My wife had to change jobs and come work for me. And, we're doing a good job at transitioning to business, but it's going slower than I wanted it to go. I wanted to be running for Congress again. Like, I want to have a voice in 2024 with what I believe is going to happen. And I want to be able to be there to educate Americans so they're not freaking out and making bad decisions, because I
Mhm.
don't think that the media is going to be prepared to do it. And I don't think that the people running for office have any clue what they should be studying. And it's a full-time job. Like, this is just being prepared enough to know the right information to tell people is a full-time job. And I know through this whole endeavor, people like to give me advice like, oh, you should be on TV, you should be doing these things. And it's like, it's very flattering.
Easier said than done. Yeah.
It is very flattering, and I agree with you. I should, but and they're like, well, you should do this so you can be on TV, and you should do this so you could be on TV. And it's like, yeah, you're right. I should do those things, so I should be on TV. But my goal is not to be on TV. My goal is to be prepared with information. So if I ever get a chance to be on TV, I will have something of value to say.
Mhm.
And there's no other way to do it than to, like, I mean, with splitting my time with the business, I have to make choices. And the thing that I'm always going to drop off the bucket and not do is selling myself, because I'm going to spend that time with my family. I'm going to spend that time on my business. I'm going to spend that time studying. Like I said, one book a week. If I had more time, it'd be one book a day. And that's what it really needs to be. And people are like, hey, it doesn't need to be that way. I disagree, because that's what James Madison did, and that's what Teddy Roosevelt did, and that's what Abraham Lincoln did, and that's what all the great leaders that we've ever had have done. They just read ferociously, and it's kind of like being a parent, and that's why they were called our founding fathers, right? Is because
Right.
they were able to guide us simply because they had more information about us. And when I say us, I mean American citizens. And how that happens is they just read a lot of history. They read the stories that had happened before, and now you're able to layer those over the present, see what's going on, and make better decisions going forward, if you're incentivized to make those decisions. And they were, because of the situation with Britain. So, and I kind of see that, and I go, things happen and people kind of freak out, and I go, whoa, let's not freak out here. It's okay. Like, I mean, it's not okay. Things were done that were wrong, but we don't have to, it's not the end of the world. It's only the end of the world if we think it's the end of the world and we retaliate like it's the end of the world. And we keep escalating the problem until we get to a point of no quarter, where now we're at war with each other in some shape or fashion, either legislatively or physically. And yeah, I think that, like I said, I want to be able to do that going into 2024. I'm not going to be able to do that unless if I just break down and just, hey, pay me $50 a month. Like, I just pay me $50 a month and I'll work my butt off reading books about Congress and history, and I will write about it and I will share it. And, when 2024 comes up and there's, 6 people running for president and they can't figure out which one won, because you've never had an electoral college where it was split this much, you can come ask me what we should do, and I'll have read about it, and I'll be able to tell you.
Be there for us.
I'll be there, like, this is what I do, or what I would like to do. But if I can't get that, I'm going to have to step back for a little while, just because of the time. And, I gotta be able to pay my mortgage, which means I have to devote, if it's going to be me and the wife on the business, then that means I have to give this type of attention to that during this type of economic times. Let's put it that way.
Right. It's not gonna be. We just had a speech in church about how they need to donate more because things are more expensive, but it's more expensive for everyone. Like, it's tough times.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I don't know, the, is it Jim or James? Hold on. James, this guy right here, we had on our podcast. He's been tweeting some positive economic numbers, but I am more skeptical.
But, like, again, like, do you trust the positive economic numbers? Like, I feel like a lot of that stuff, not that it's cooked, but it's so microscopic in a certain sense. Like, it doesn't quite tell the whole story. Like, yes, employment's up, yes, people's wages are up, but, like, I feel like we've got less money coming into the house every year or every month in terms of, like, what we spend, are able to spend it on. And things are just more expensive. Like, my property tax bill went up because the school board keeps raising stuff. So, like, like, it's a lot of things, a lot of little things that are kind of adding up. And I think that's the weird aspect for it. And I just think, like, there's a lot of uncertainty about it. Obviously China's a big producer of so many goods that come into us, and we're kind of in this weird quasi war with them where we don't like what they do and they don't like what we do. And so we go kind of tit for tat, that could escalate. Obviously what's happening in Ukraine, Israel, are big situations that could boil over into kind of, Europe. I guess Europe has been very peaceful for the past 70 years, but you never know. where that
Yeah.
could go. And in the Middle East has been peaceful for the past like 7 months before this. So this could lead to something bigger. And there's a lot of big parties, we've got bases all around there. I'm sure China has bases all around there. Russia's involved in Syria. Like things could escalate very quickly, as they say.
Well,
So like there's a lot of
and
uncertainty.
again, back to, hey, where do you want to get your information from?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to hear about, or what should you hear about as a voting citizen? And you're talking about all these conflicts, and then we were talking about campaign finance. And let's think back to like when campaign finance really came to be. That was the McKinley era. What
Mm-hmm.
happened? We immediately started going to war, right?
Yeah.
As soon as corporations started. And why did this happen? Because the corporations had interests that were outside of the United States. Okay. And they were
And see,
influenced.
like this is what gets me. Like people don't talk enough about this time of period. Like we've got the Spanish American War at the turn of the century. Um, then kind of the whole lead up in Europe before the entangling alliances before World War One. I believe there's another conflict in there, or maybe
So
not.
the Philippines,
Philippines. Well, yeah,
the
like
Philippines,
there's a lot of things going around that again, like it's in people's interest
Cuba,
to.
Cuba. We could have had Cuba. The story of that twice we could have had Cuba and we didn't. And I feel like we would have been better off if we did have Cuba, but I don't know. We could have had it
wouldn't give
legit too.
wouldn't have given Kennedy anything to do when he was president. So I get it.
But I mean, but that's the point. And back to the campaign finance that we were talking about before, there should be boundaries, okay,
Mm-hmm.
of where you donate, and to make sure that, and then the corporation does not fit into those boundaries. It has interests outside of the United States. And I know that individual citizens have interests outside of the United States, but those interests are not as powerful, okay? And it is different and more transparent if the people are up there and they have to defend their money and go, hey, I put it in for this person that's more, global than this
Right.
person,
Right.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
And again, nobody talks about that's my area of expertise, right? The antebellum era and the Gilded Age, the dead zones. I read where nobody else reads because it's just cool to know things that people don't know. And it's like history kind of just forgot about it. But there's a lot of great books out there on them, and you can read them and study Congress and all that stuff. But or you can give me $50 a month and I'll do it.
Sold right
Sold.
there.
And it doesn't have to. I don't know. Like I've never done this whole subscription thing before, but we'll figure it out. I think I do need to reach a certain number by December. Otherwise, like I said, I'll probably pack it up. You can give 25, somebody else gives 75, that's basic balance. I need like 160 at 50 for me to move forward. That's what I'm thinking. But we'll see after we open it up. What do you think, John?
Make it work. That's what I say. No, but I agree. Like, there's my favorite book on duties. Cicero talks about being able to give what you have and not give profligately, where you're just sort of, if you don't have a lot of money but you're borrowing it and then spending it, but being able to, what is that? Oh, look at that, Cicero. I know him.
I finally got him.
There we go. About time.
See, and if
But
I would already have read
it's
them if
about
I had
like
time.
giving what you have. And like I talked to Katie's always about like this, like, oh, you should stay more involved in the same sense. But like the greatest gift we have is our time. And if we don't have the ability to give it, it's not, it comes from somewhere else.
Right.
And it's not a complaint. It's just a matter of fact. Like you can only give what you have.
Yeah.
And you got to find a way to quote buy your time so that you can give it away, if you will. So
Yeah.
there's a proverb or something that it's like pay dearly for education and give it away freely or something. It's a I'll find the quote, I'll put in there, but it's in that same event. Like you got to learn a lot, and then you don't charge someone for what you've learned because you're helping them. And I think that's what we're doing in this podcast.
Yeah. And well, maybe we'll throw together. I'll throw together some sort of like swag prize where you get a t-shirt.
There you
Everybody
go.
gives away a t-shirt. I have a specialty in making t-shirts, so like You donate $50 a
You
month,
you
you
know
get
a guy who can
get
do
a
t-shirts for
t-shirt.
you.
It'll say, I gave Jeff Mayhugh $50 a month, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt and a whole bunch of information on representation.
And then a QR code to the podcast. There you go.
Oh, you know, we could give him I can give him a t-shirt and I give him the whole literature packet, the
Mhm.
representation, the sphere of power. I got it all ready to go. We do that. That's
Done.
and hey, it's supposed to be informational. It's, you know, think about it this way. If you wanted to know, like, Jeff, what have you learned over the last 3 years? Like, what should the American citizen know about like being a good stewardship of their rights? Don't focus so much on the presidency.
Hmm.
So focus at home, right? Focus on your local elections. Vote in the primary election and meet the candidate. Okay. If at least on the Republican side, it is really easy to go out and actually meet your candidate. And if you're a Democrat that tries to meet your candidate and you can't, don't vote for that person. Go
That's
meet
right.
the Republican and just find out if they're as evil as you've been told, right?
That's right.
Because and look, and I disagree with a lot of the Republican candidates running for office, but I disagree with them because they were more like the Democrats than they were less like the Democrats. Okay. And so if you just actually went out and talked to the person, I feel like you'd have a lot more in common than you think.
Hmm.
And is your voice really being heard if you're not speaking to the candidate? And
Nope.
do you really have any choice if you're just showing up on the general election day and voting, because you're just voting the party's voice? You didn't choose that person and you didn't have a say in that person. So, like I said, number one rule, focus local. Stop paying attention to the president, okay? That's for the elites, all right? It's okay that the president's elite. He's got a lot of responsibility. Focus on your congressional race and vote in the primary. Just so important. Vote in the primary.
Vote in both primaries if you can. Well,
Yeah.
not always. Not always. So,
Well, it's been a good episode, John.
been a good episode. I think you there's a book you want to talk about sort of towards the
There
end.
is. Well, I mean, you've already pubbed Why Congress like 5 times. We're like a book promotion podcast now. And I've talked about my Reed's Rules, but our good friend Craig Stewart of the Madisonian Republicans has a new book out. It's called, oops, oh,
Over. There you go.
Emergence. Sorry, I should have gone that way. It's Emergence. It's a sci-fi novel. And I haven't read it yet. And Craig's probably like, Jeff, why haven't you read it yet? But it came out on November 1st. You can buy it on Amazon. I highly recommend it. I haven't read this one, but I've read chapters of it because Craig gave me a little sneak peek and it was very good. Craig's a fantastic writer. I follow his Substack. He's a great poet. You know how much I love poetry. So I know this book is going to be fantastic. We will, of course, be covering it on our podcast, What the Book. But yeah, it's exciting. Craig's awesome, and it's freaking awesome that he did this.
It's good. Yeah, no, I think more of us should become authors as well. But again, it goes back to time. He's got the time. He found a way. Make it
Yeah.
happen.
Have you bought it yet? Have you bought it?
I need to get it. I need to get it.
Oh, you
Make
got
it
to
after this podcast.
Yeah, go buy his book. We'll do a Madisonian book club around it.
There we go.
Like I know there's probably a lot of government in this book. I mean, that's why I like to read sci-fi, because sci-fi is basically government.
Yes, it is about futuristic governments. What our government can be doing right now. I mean, that was the thing with the conservative futurist was the whole race to Mars. You know, that's the government promoting a future society and where we could potentially go, and being willing to spend the money to try to get there.
Yeah, we got to get back to that. Having hope, focus, ideas. All right, man. Well, this has been a good episode. I appreciate it, John. Thank you to all of our listeners out there. Remember to like and subscribe, share the show if you can. If you're able to subscribe, pay subscribe, you can go on and pledge your donation support. So we'll see it once we get to the number we need. We'll open it up for actual donations and we'll get this thing rolling. And I can promise you, I've put a lot of work into making sure that whenever this moment came where I was getting paid for my work, that it would be professional and would be good. And I hope that over the last couple years, you've seen my growth in my writing and my productions, and know that once I have the ability to give it 100% of my work focus, I can promise that it'll be a very polished and professional piece. So appreciate everybody out there that's been listening, and I'm excited for what we have to move forward. John, anything before we head out?
No, again, just appreciate everyone listening to the podcast and giving your honest feedback and coming to our meetings and everything. We'll see you next time.
All right. Peace and love.